harder when the rest of me is down. You enchant me even when you're not around. If there are boundaries, I will try to knock them down. I'm latching on, babe. Now I know what I have found. I feel we're close enough. Could I lock in your love? I feel we're close enough. Could I lock in your love? I've got you with my space. I won't let go of you. Got you shackled in my embrace. I'm latching on to you. I'm so encaptured, got me wrapped up in your touch. Feel so enamored, hold me tight within your clutch. How do you do it? You got me losing every breath. What did you give me to make my heart beat out my chest? I feel we're close enough. Could I lock in your love? I feel we're close enough. Could I lock in your love? I've got you with my space. I won't let go of you. Got you shackled in my embrace. I'm latching on to you. Now I've got you with my space. I won't let go of you. Got you shackled in my embrace. I'm latching on to you. I'm latching on to you.
They painted up your secrets with the lies they told to you, and the least they ever gave you was the most you ever knew. And I wonder where these dreams go when the world gets in your way. What's the point in all this screaming? No one's listening anyway. Your voice is small and fading, and you're hiding here unknown. And your mother loves your father, 'cause she's got nowhere to go. And she wonders where these dreams go, 'cause the world got in her way. What's the point in never trying? Nothing's changing anyway. They press their lips against you, and you love the lies they say. And I tried so hard to reach you, but you're falling anyway. And you know I see right through you, 'cause the world gets in What's the point in all this screaming? They're not listening anyway.
Good evening, everybody. Hey, I'm just a little bit of a heads up. We're just actually waiting for a couple of our panellists who are frantically trying to find the room here. So if you can just bear with us, we'll start when they arrive. So that's the only reason for the hold up. Thank you.
Gonna steal a silver stallion with not a mark upon his silky hide, teaching me can trust me like a sister. One day we'll settle up and ride, and we're gonna ride, we're gonna ride. Ride like the one-eyed jack of diamonds with the devil close behind. We're gonna ride, we're gonna ride. I'm gonna find me a reckless man, razor blades and ice in his eyes, just a touch of sadness in his fingers, thunder and lightning in his thighs. And we're gonna ride, we're gonna ride, ride like the one-eyed jack of diamonds with the devil close behind. We're gonna ride, we're gonna ride.
All right. Can you hear me? Sensational. Hey, welcome. It's good to have you. My name's Tim. Michaela's coming because we're always waiting for Michaela. That's just how it works.
That is not even true.
So it's really good. For those of you that were here for Theology Subject 666, that's not this one. But I'm allowed to have jokes about that because I work for a church-based organisation. But if you're here for the FFF 101, yes, then that's this class. So we're all going to be good and see. So what? Just as a little invitation, there might be some more people coming because we've got 90-odd registrations. But, sometimes you register for stuff and then just say, no, it's cold, it's windy, and I haven't had dinner and I'm not going. So There's an invitation for anyone who's far back and feels totally disconnected and isolated from the rest of your humanity in the room, and you are welcome to come forward because it's fun. One little piece of advice, though, because if you're sitting in the front row, that is the best place to be because you'll be the first to get spat on by me or Michaela when we get excited in our speech. I used to have a math lecturer who did that, and he'd get little globbles of spittle on the edges of his mouth when he was teaching math, and it would be really quite intriguing to watch the spit. And I don't know what I'm talking about, but if you're sitting in the front row, the back of your head may be captured on video, so I do hope you have brushed your hair. If you've got a mobile phone, can you make sure it's on silent or turned off, just so it doesn't ring at the most inopportune time and you can't get it out of your pocket and you're busily trying to get it out and everyone's looking at you and it's really embarrassing. So just avoid that. Then, if also in terms of bathrooms and toilet, if you do need to go, feel free just to go whenever, but you go out the back doors and chuck a right, and they're around that way, and you'll hopefully find them. So that they are some of the big things I think that you need to know. So if you do want to move closer, then feel free to do that. Michaela.
Tim, thank you for that beautiful introduction. Can I just see a show of hands? Has anyone been to one of our previous events? This is our third one. Oh, good. Oh, yeah, good. I'm glad you guys came back. That would be important. Just checking so I know how many jokes we can recycle. Okay. So how we're going to roll tonight is we've got 2 hours together. We're going to start with a bit of an introduction of our panel, get to know you type questioning. And then most of you hopefully would have registered some questions when you indicated that you were attending tonight. So we're going to work our way through some of those. We may not be able to get to all of them, but don't worry, you'll have other opportunities to get your answers, because at the end we're going to open it up to you to ask any burning questions that have maybe come up for you during the conversation tonight or that you feel weren't answered when you pre-registered them. And at the end of the evening, we will have a bit of hospitality outside and the panellists will be staying, so there'll be another opportunity for you to continue the conversation and ask questions. So plenty of chances to be part of the conversation tonight. But on that note, we might just get cracking with a little bit of an introduction video that we have before we...
We might get Brianna first.
Oh,
what do you reckon,
that's
Michaela?
probably even a better idea, Tim.
Because Brianna's really lovely. Hey, Brianna. Brianna is actually going to do a welcome to country for us, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Oh, what? Thanks, Michaela, for letting me have a go on the microphone. It's really awesome of you. Nara, thank you. It's so beautiful to hear somebody in the audience send me a Nara back, so I appreciate that. Hello, thank you. Nara in my language means hello. My name is Brianna, and I'm a descendant of the Dulla people who once occupied the region just to the west of us in the Conondale Ranges. And when colonisation occurred in this region, we amalgamated with our neighbouring states and became known as Kabi Kabi or Gubbi Gubbi people. Yes, we are the same mob. It's just varying translations at the time because, as you may know, we didn't have a written language. So we have to take the word of anthropologists who transcribed our language phonetically as they heard it. And so the G and the K was traditionally a k. And so depending who was listening and how well they were listening, they may have heard the G or they may have heard the K. Tonight we're going to have a lot of fun. The last two sessions that we've held, I've personally had a lot of fun. A welcome to country, since we're here about spirituality, when I do a welcome to country, it's about honouring my ancestors, the spirits that I believe are embedded within this landscape, and letting them know that I come here with a good heart and that I believe that I am welcoming these people in front of me to share in this space in their country, and that they will also do the same and show respect to the spirits that are embedded within this land that we're standing on. A perfect example of that is when I look at the mountains, when I look at the Glasshouse Mountains, when I look at Coolum, when I look at Nindari, I see my ancestors. I don't just see mountains. So I'm forever surrounded by my elders watching over me and making sure I'm doing the right thing. So on behalf of my family, my elders, my ancestors, I'd like to welcome you here tonight to this conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I have.
Thanks so much, Brianna.
Can I get first pick of the chairs because I'm already up here?
Absolutely, you can.
Oh, yeah.
What we wanted to do, we're going to just start off just with a short little video, just to give you a little snapshot on who our panellists are, and then we'll get a chance to introduce them. So just cast your eyes up the front here. Pretty good, eh? Who knew there was 156 countries, 45 faiths and 96 languages represented or spoken here on the Sunshine Coast? Who knew that? Who hasn't seen the video before? That's pretty amazing, hey? I was properly stunned when I actually saw that. So that's where we are. We're in a pretty unique and exciting place. Can I just invite the panellists to come on down, the ones that aren't seated here already. So the purpose of this sort of gathering, and we're having 4 in total, this is the third one. The purpose of these gatherings is for us just to recognise and realise that the Sunshine Coast is a diverse place, and it is changing. It is growing. It's not as it was 10 years ago, let alone 50 years ago. We're in a different place. And so what would it look like to create opportunities for people to have conversations? What would it be like to actually make it easier, or at least lower some of the barriers for people to engage somebody who is somewhat different to them, as well as actually learn maybe some skills just by watching and listening and witnessing how you can actually engage in a positive way with people of other faiths or other cultures, or who are decidedly not you. It would be a good thing. So tonight's a really good opportunity for that. Michaela, what do you got?
I have lots of things, Tim.
Yes.
We might just start with some panel introductions. So if we hand over to our esteemed panel and just ask you to introduce yourself, a bit about your faith that you're representing here tonight, and any kind of those key points of connection for you that might help the audience get to know you a little more.
Hi, I'm Cherky. I've just moved, in the process of moving from Sydney. In fact, I just got off a plane to Chen Resig Institute above Udlo, below Malini, better known, right? In the bush. So amazing, going from a city into a beautiful bush setting where I can see the ocean from my little house. So, yeah, I mean, you've got to all come up and have a look. It's just beautiful. Anyway, so I grew up in Newcastle in New South Wales, grew up Catholic. I have a brother who's Muslim, mostly Catholic in my family, and Anglican. In fact, one of my brothers, when they were getting married, he married an Anglican woman, and the churches were either side of the highway, and it was just dependent on who could give them the service that they wanted at the time they wanted. So we're pretty open. I grew up to be open to all faiths. My mother used to say, and then there's the Calathumpians. I don't know if anyone else ever heard that. I never knew what they were, but I don't know if they exist, but anyway. So, so it's been, I guess my life journey has been one of spiritual discovery, and I thought I was going to be a Catholic nun. When I grew up Catholic, I hung around the Catholic nuns and thought that would be my future, because I really wanted to be a nun. And then I got into my 20s and a whole other thing happened for about 20 years. Anyway, so I guess I'm in the Tibetan tradition of Buddhism. So there's many different traditions of Buddhism, just like Christianity and so forth. The one thing that we don't, we see it all as teachings of the Buddha, so there's no sort of criticism of, in fact, we've got to learn each other's tradition within Buddhism. And then, of course, I follow the Dalai Lama being in Tibetan Buddhism, and the Dalai Lama, I think one of his 3 goals in life, he said at a very early age, was interfaith dialogue. So here we are.
My name's Jeremy. I'm a bishop in the Anglican Church, and the Anglican Church is a particular part of the Christian tradition. The Christian tradition is very broad, and the Anglican Church is very broad, but I look after a region in the Diocese of Brisbane that stretches from the Brisbane River to Bundaberg, so about 50 churches and 7 schools and a number of social welfare outlets as well. I grew up in the church. Christianity and faith and church was something that was part of my life from as long as I could remember. And then, like most good teenagers, I decided it was all a waste of time and gave it away until in my 20s I started to think again about some of the important and significant questions, and I was riding my pushback bike around Europe and decided that perhaps I was going to be a priest, which was rather an odd thing. And so studied in Adelaide, and that's where I trained and was ordained. And I've been in Queensland the last 5 years, living up here on the coast, spending a lot of time in my car, listening to the ABC, which is something desperately worth supporting.
Hey, Jeremy, have you got family?
I do. I'm married to Josie, a midwife, and we have 3 children, rapidly greying. I have 2 teenage daughters and feeling older and older by the minute.
Hello, I'm Sheikh Naveed. I'm one of the doctors here on the coast. English is not my first language, so if you have got difficulties understanding me, just shout out and I'll stop. I am your average Joe on the bus kind of a Muslim. I haven't got any qualifications like all these people sitting around me. But yeah, I'm here representing the faith of Islam, which is monotheistic, and it's the last in the lineage of the Abrahamic religions. Myself came from Pakistan about 7 years ago. I spent the initial couple of years a bit north in Fraser Coast. And then for the past 4.5 years, I've been living here on the coast and working here. I am married to another doctor, and we have got 2 kids, an 8-year-old boy and a 6-month-old boy. So again, I'm a bit sleep deprived as well. So if I'm a bit wonky, please forgive me. Thank you.
Aryam all, before I start with, I salute all of you here and a warm welcome to this beautiful session. The thirst and the search and the quest which made you to come here, it's a great spot where we open with a beautiful education of awareness with all the religions. As Naveed said, English is not my first language, but the Mother Australia grew me up in the complete spirituality after I came to Australia. It was 22 years back. So most of my time is in Victoria. I'm Yogi Sri Amareshwari Amba. So come from the Sri Vidya tradition, which is a very long tradition. And well, it takes a very long time to explain the tradition as well. I come from the Guru lineage and the Guru heritage, regarded as a Guru in India and Guru in Australia as well, representing the Yoga Peedam. So the union with the self through Hinduism, and Hinduism is my birth religion. And I am a mother of 2 lovely kids, Brahmi Adikanan and Abhiram Adikanan. They both study in Mumbai State Primary School, and I come from Didiliba, Sunshine Coast. Beautiful up in the semi-hill, as you see in the video. Well, it's getting to be developed for the Yoga Peedam structure to be done. So for us, it's a humans are the temple, and there lives a beautiful soul, is the divine. So representing this beautiful religion and yoga, it's a very long journey to explain with. And this is my part of my life here. But as I said, you like this complete spirituality grew up. I took all the practices from India and bringing those practices and living in a land of Western culture and having those practices on me, and as well as transforming the people of Australia is a great thing to be done. And this is all tonight to share with about me and myself and my role of life and the journey of the spirituality. We're going to be engaged for another 2 hours. So you all have to bear with me with all the stories. Pranams.
Thank you. Well, I'm a little bit like Naveed. I'm just your average Joe Aboriginal woman, but I am a traditional owner and I take that responsibility. I choose to take that responsibility very seriously. My spirituality is my connection to country. As I said in my introduction, I'm constantly surrounded by my ancestors and my elders. So how can you ever feel alone? I love that. When I was a small girl, we went to church. We went to the Anglican church. And I guess that's because my nan grew up in the dormitory in Cherbourg, and that was the church, that was the religion that was taught to them. They weren't able to practice their culture, their language, and their own spirituality at that time. And so that's the religion that was handed down to me when I was a small girl, was Christianity. It's only been in my adult life that I've been on this journey to reconnect, because I knew that something was missing in my life. And so I figured it out that the ancestors were calling me back to connect with my country. And unlike my beautiful friends here that I call my friends now, even though we've met each other only twice before tonight, I don't have a book of teachings. I don't have, the writings of Buddha. I don't have the Quran. I don't have yogi teachings to follow. It's been a journey that I've had to do on my own, reconnecting in my own time within my landscape, and I've had to do a lot of research to reconnect with those dreaming stories and to find what that meant for me. But other than being an Aboriginal woman, I'm a mum, I'm a sister, I'm an auntie. I've got 2 children that are my own. I've got 6 children that are not my own, because in my culture, my nieces and nephews are my children. And I take the role of auntie very seriously. It's my favourite job. As much as I love being a mum, being an auntie is my most favourite and most important role, because I'm not just an auntie to my sister's children and my brother's children. I'm also an auntie to the other Indigenous kids that live within my community. So, my husband's name is Ben. I've been married for just over a year, and as I said, we've got 2 beautiful children, 5 and 8, 2 girls, and I'm not looking forward to the future of them being teenagers at the same time, unfortunately. But that's just a little bit about me. So thanks, Michaela.
Michaela, before you go, I missed out one thing. I have to introduce a lovely person in my life. It's my husband, Adhikana Nagapan, which I forgot to tell you all. Sorry.
Oh,
And he's got it all on video, Yogi, so you can't get away from it now.
you can't escape. And Yogi, I just got to say, whenever my wife forgets me, she does not say anything. Like, she just does. I think she does it on purpose.
Well, no comments there. But this lovely show is going to be in India as well, and everyone is going to be on there. So they would be saying, oh, she forgot the lovely tradition of taking the husband there, So I had to be very careful in my words.
Beautiful. Hey, I'm just intrigued. Like, you come from different spaces and you've had different journeys, and you've just shared a snippet of it. As a basic question, though, how do your beliefs, your faith, your values influence the way that you engage with people in the world at large, in the community? Like, what does that look like? There has to be a connection between what I believe and what I follow and what I think to what I do. So I'm just intrigued as to what's the connection, and how do your beliefs actually inspire and direct those interactions?
I'm going to talk again because it's actually really fun. I'm starting to like it. So, as I said before, being a traditional owner, I take my responsibilities quite seriously. I work in schools. I've chosen to work within schools to lead young Aboriginal people who don't have strong leaders in their life. I choose to be that loving, caring auntie that they may not get at home, because I believe that at the core of our culture, aside from our spirituality, aside from our songs and our dance and our art, is our kinship and our connection to our mob. So that's what informs my everyday life, is my connection to my mob, my community, my family. Also my connection to country. So I don't litter. I pick up rubbish when I'm out in public. I might look like a bit strange. I share my dreaming stories. I try to practice culture rather than constantly studying it or sharing it. I try and practice it, which means, like you saw in the video, going out and collecting lamanja and weaving and doing string making and things like that. So I try to have it inform everything that I do, but none of us are perfect.
If I could just jump in there. So a few years ago, when the Dalai Lama was in Australia, the tour around Australia was called, I think at that time he went to Brisbane, it was called Beyond Religion. And I guess we find, Buddha and all our great teachers like that, like the Dalai Lama and so forth, are way ahead of, it's certainly my thinking. So it just echoes the thought that, out of the 7 billion people in the world, most people don't follow a religion, don't have a faith. And even in the last census, one thing they say, Buddhism's the fastest growing religion in Australia, and I just go, well, some of the others aren't growing. So it's about young people in particular identifying with a sense of some spirituality, but more like their own individual, not labelling it under any organised religion or faith or so forth. And it fits, I guess, in how I practice or try to practice day to day, is that for the theme for that visit by the Dalai Lama was physically, mentally, emotionally, we're all the same, like connecting in with our shared humanity, and that the differences of race, colour, belief, language, socioeconomic status, everything else is secondary. And often we get caught up in the secondary rather than with our primary connection. And so certainly in a lot of our Buddhist practices is to treat all beings equally, in that we all want to be happy and we don't want to suffer, basically. We all want to be happy. So to equally treat people, whether they're friend, whether they help you, whether they hate you, and that's the challenge. Or whether we're indifferent to them, because most people in the world we just ignore because they're just there. I'm coming from Sydney, right? You've got to put that in perspective. So, but I've spent enough time out of Sydney to know, that a smile goes a long way, a wave of a hand, friendship. It's our sort of shared connection that we're sharing this planet. I don't know that it happens here, but it happens in Sydney. People get in a car and it's like they forget that they're a human being, and it's sort of turned into metal, and then there's road rage, and I'm sure it doesn't happen here, right? No, please tell me it doesn't happen.
Have you ever driven with the Taylor?
Never. Anyway, so I learned early in my spiritual journey. I had, if you want to practice on the spiritual path, give way in the traffic, and that's sort of I progressed. I have progressed in the car over 20 years, become a kinder driver. So just practical things like that, just practical everyday. And I probably have to mention Richard Gere, right? I do have to mention, I've mentioned Richard Gere. So when I first encountered a video him talking in a Buddhist as a Buddhist, he said, everyone I meet, and I figure he meets a lot of people, right? He's famous. Everyone I meet, the first thought I have is, may you be well, may you be happy. So I try and embrace that, and I have to say it does transform how I relate to people by just thinking that. Not saying out loud in case they think I'm a bit weird or lock me up, but just may you be well, may you be happy, just having that in my heart.
Thanks, John. You got the mic, Naveed.
I'm usually the lucky last. Yeah. Gotten used to the spotlights now. Anyways, so within Islam, as it's a monotheistic religion, you've got one God. But if you look at the practice of the religion, it's largely divided in two parts. One is Hukuk-ullah, or the rights towards Allah or the God. The other is Hukuk-ul-ibad, or rights towards people that surround you. So I'm not going to concentrate a lot on the rights towards God, which are relatively simple, and a lot of you would already be aware of the 5 prayers and paying 2.5% of your wealth as alms in a year and fasting and all that. But the other part, which is often missed in media debates about Islam, is the rights towards other humans. And if you look at that particular part, that contains harsher penalties at the time of Day of Judgment. And you have to be more robust in exercising those rights than you have to be towards God. What that means is that there is a hierarchy of people in your life that you have to look after, and you have to make sure that you are doing the right thing by them. Number one is your parents. And within the parents, mom has got 3 times the rights than the father. So you have to serve mom thrice before you think about the father.
I'm pretty sure that's how it is in my family.
Yeah. But a lot of places, people tend to forget that mom was the one who carried you in her belly for 9 months. And Islam preaches quite openly that even if you died and were resurrected and did the whole thing all over again, just serving your mom all through your life, you cannot pay back those 9 months. That's as simple as that. So then comes the father, and you have to respect your father as much as you respect. If it was the time of the Prophet and you were with the Prophet, you have to respect your father just as you would have respected the Prophet. So if your father said sit down, you sit down. You don't argue with anything. Next comes your teachers in that hierarchy. So your teachers are to be respected as much as you respect your father. Next comes your neighbors. And when you say neighbors, it's 40 on the right, 40 on the left, 40 forward, and 40 at the back of you. And so I think if you get to that, that's half of your life done. So you have a responsibility towards all these people. And the responsibility says that you have to be aware of these people living around you. And if one of them is on some form of difficulty right now and they're striving in life, or there's something going on, you become equally responsible for that. If you are now aware of that, and as the principle says, if you had 2 pieces of bread and the person next to you needs one, you give them one. And if you come across another person on the left who needed another, you forget about yourself, you give the other one to them. So that's how you serve your responsibility towards other human beings that you have to do. And I guess that then my belief system teaches me that anybody that I come across, it is prohibited on me to lie, to cheat, tell them the wrong thing, or do the wrong thing by them. And also to be aware of these rights towards other people that I have to fulfill. Because if I don't, On the day of judgment, God might go, well, you didn't say your 5 prayers a day, you're going to get punishment, but it's a merciful, forgiving God. So he might also say, well, you were good to that particular person at some point, so we'll let go of that one. But if Michaela came and said, we did those 4 sessions and he was an absolute someone to me on those 4
I would
sessions.
never say that, Naveed.
You might, you never know. God's going to go, well, we have got everything recorded, and yes, you were quite rude to this person. So what we're going to do is that we're going to give some of your good deeds to Michaela, to the point that all my good deeds are distributed across to people that I have not been good to. And then even after that, if the accounts are not settled, I start receiving the bad deeds that you do.
Which is a lot.
You're in trouble. Just my driving alone, it sounds like.
So that's how my daily practice is informed.
Thanks so
I think for me, looking to the life and teachings of Jesus is an assurance or an understanding that all of us are created in the image of God. And the call is to love God and to love our neighbour. And so that means that every interaction with every person has to be informed by that. That underneath every interaction is a love which says, I care for you, or I love you as I would love God. And so that necessarily has to inform my politics, and it necessarily has to inform my interactions with people from other faiths. It necessarily has to inform my interactions with the people I find most difficult. All of those things have to be grounded in that place that says, when I look into your eyes, I may just see God. And that's a really challenging thing to do in a world where our default is to retreat into a place of difference, or a place of mistrust, or a place where we build up barriers and look after ourselves. To enter into every relationship as if it might be an encounter with God can be a challenging thing. But I think that's at the heart of the Christian faith. That's how we're called to live.
Well, it's a good question, actually. Before I touch on to the Hinduism and Hindu perspective, actually in Hindu religion, first it talks about transforming your lovely self. First I get transformed, and then I transform the people around me and the community. So to transform myself, I have to take all those lovely practices every day and every moment on me. And there will be challenges on the road, and there will be experiences we learn out through that. Then we don't react to it, but we accept with love, with an open heart space. And once I get transformed, like every moment, you have your own relationship like father, mother, husband, and kids. And we grew up in a family and become dependent first, and then we slowly become independent inside. So how this Hinduism talks about, on the Hinduism broader aspect, it talks about the acceptance, love, and care on your own self. When I know really that I am placed very well in the nature, in the great space, then I want the people around me to have that beautiful space as well, right? So there it describes about Matha, Pita, Guru, Devam. Okay, so what it means is first priority we give to the mother, then the second priority we give to the father. Okay, it is not nothing called it's a lower level or middle level or then God becomes the higher level. It is the stages that we achieve from the lower level, which we term as from the low energy, and then we come into the balance of the energy. Then we come up to the heightened level of the expansion. So we start with the love and nurture showing towards the family. And in the family, we respect the mother and the father equally, because father becomes the teacher and everything. So mother becomes the divine. Then I face the teacher. Whatever the education is given by, we educate ourselves. Like, we go to primary school, we study something, we go to the music teacher. Whatever the art we learn, or yoga we learn, or the study we learn, or whatever we learn, then someone is teaching us, and that teacher is respected as a guru. Okay, so equal respect goes to the guru. From there, we get seeded into the divine. So the complete ultimate path of the practices and the divine. So when I take these 4 beautiful stages on me, and wherever I go, whichever the world and whatever the community I face and whoever I talk with, it's already been seeded on me. So how will I be? I will be at just a beautiful human level to reach, and from beyond the human level, I'll get into the very great expansion of with love and care for the community. Every moment is a challenge for everybody in this world. So just because I become a yogi doesn't mean everything flows very quickly and easily. The challenges are always there, more than the normal people. So when people call me or address me as a yogi, then I give myself in the hands of them, and I become a child. I become a witness in front of them that there is a teacher watching me. She or he has addressed me as a yogi. So now how should I be? I should be in the union within the self. So with that respect and the love for the society, and still now blessed with the nature.
So you've all already started talking a bit about what your faith has taught you, some lessons that has taught you, whether they're purely scripture-based teachings or experiences through practicing your faith. And we do have a few pre-registered questions that want to delve a bit further into that. So a couple of people have asked if you could talk about the one key teaching of your faith, or the one lesson that you've learnt through practicing your faith that you think is kind of the key for you.
It's obviously to be humble.
That's the one. I was trying to think of the word. Well, I was trying to think what might be, I guess, what we've discovered with our dialogue. There's a lot of shared common ground in terms of our, sort of fundamental values and so forth. I guess the difference for me, growing up Catholic, then searching, and then becoming Buddhist, is that so Buddhism is said to be it's not a monotheistic faith. We don't have a God. I mean, we talk about Buddha a lot, right? But the Buddha said, I can only show the way. I can't do it for you. And so the emphasis is on the mind. Buddha was like the ultimate psychologist, knew everything there was to know about the mind, and all the teachings are about how the mind works. So you see these days someone like the Dalai Lama having conversations with neuroscientists and psychologists and everyone in the fields of the mind to see if science can prove what the Buddha taught, disprove what the Buddha taught, because the Buddha said, look, if you can prove it wrong, chuck it out, fine. If you can prove it wrong, right? So it's up to each individual to work with their mind. And I guess while there is the engagement with others, which is, to be of, at least do no harm with what you say and what you do. And already that's profound. If that happened in the world, if people only said what, and then if you can be of benefit. So if people only said what was beneficial, the world would be a very quiet place, wouldn't it? Really, truly. So it's really about working with the mind and getting to know your own mind, and we have many, many different meditation practices to do that. The good news is that everything that is negative in our mind, and this is what has profoundly affected me, is that everything that is negative is temporary. It might be well trained, but it can, in other words, it's like dirt in a cloth. So some very stubborn stains there, but you can get rid of it eventually. And that everything is positive is in our nature. We call that Buddha nature, you call it whatever you want, but our true nature is positive. I mean, look, we're social beings. We come together in community. We have similar aspirations and so forth. So to get control of the mind means to, the analogy is used of a drunken wild elephant in a rut. That's the untrained mind. And to gain some control of it takes some doing, but it's you don't have to have a belief in any faith for that. You just have to have a functioning mind. That's it. So it's a good thing to teach in schools, I reckon, from day one, because it aids concentration. If you're a teacher, the school kids all get well behaved. If they take it on board, they focus, concentrate. I mean, even on that level, without taking it to higher extremes, like the meditational yogis have done within the Hindu tradition, within the Buddhist tradition, and so forth, to gain exquisite states of mind. The capacity of our mind is limitless. The only thing that limits it is ourselves. So, and you sort of, more you do the practice, you realise the more possibility.
Something that you said that stuck with me was that all of your negative thoughts, all the negative stuff is only temporary. And I think that rings true for me, because some of you may have heard the Indigenous proverb, we're all just visitors to this time and place and one day we will return. And Uncle Bob Randall, he's known for grabbing the dirt and standing there and saying, this is what I come from and this is to what I will return. And so for me, that's comforting as well, because the only thing that is constant is this planet Earth. Time, people, it's going to go, it's going to pass, but our planet Earth is the one thing that we all have in common and the one thing that always remains constant. And so that's the most profound thing for me.
A few years ago, there was a terrific anti-bullying campaign for gay and lesbian young people, with older people telling their stories and at the end, the sort of catchphrase was, "It gets better." And I think at the heart of the Christian faith is this story of death and life, which says that things will get better, that even when things are at their very lowest ebb, even when the world has thrown at you everything you can imagine, even from that place, there's hope. And in the Christian story, we tell the story of the death and resurrection of Jesus. But I think it's not something that happened just 2,000 years ago. It's a recurring theme that we can see in all sorts of places and all sorts of ways. And that constant cycle of death and new life. And we see it in ourselves as we decide in ourselves, what are those things in me that need to die so that I can find new life in whatever thing. We see it in nature. We see it in all sorts of different ways. And underneath it sits this message of hope that says things will get better. And for me, as a sort of central teaching of the faith, that for me is one of the most profound and most significant.
All right. Again, just highlights, as we have said it in our previous forums, that so much of it resonates with each other. So irrespective of where we are coming from, the ultimate struggle seems to be trying to find the best place where a human being can be. And you can take various paths to get there. So I forgot to mention last time, Brianna, but this is a key teaching of the Quran, that you come from the earth and you go back into the earth. So it's mentioned in the Quran, it's a key teaching of the religion, that's how you have to think of yourself. You're nothing more than a mound of dirt, and ultimately you're going to turn into a mound of dirt. So don't accumulate worldly wealth, because it's not going to matter afterwards. You can't take any of it with you. The only thing you will be able to take with you is the deeds that you have done during whatever time you have here. So Islam teaches you that you have to think of yourself as no more than a traveler through this land. So a traveler comes and takes nothing with them. They just come and travel through and interact with people, and they have to travel through the world. That's what you're doing here. This is not what you're aiming for. You're aiming for success in the afterlife, not here. And the other key feature, or whatever you want to call it, the principle that it teaches you, that the biggest struggle in life that you have is against nafs, or the self. So there are some flaws in the self which push you towards selfishness and greed. And you have to be constantly aware that all your actions have to be against that particular part of yourself which is pushing you to be a bit selfish, pushing you to be a bit greedy and do the wrong thing by the other person. So you have to be very aware of that aspect of a human being and make sure that you keep that into check. So that's the key teaching.
Well, in Hinduism, it has a beautiful distinct stages. I grew up very young and I had a very good big search of my own self. Why I have born, for what reason I have born, and what's the purpose on earth. So these questions led me into a complete stage by stage, and then finally it exploded inside and expanded myself towards the lovely path of yoga, the union with the self. In Hinduism, it talks about the complete acceptance, love. The minimum qualification is the beauty of the nature is being born as a human on earth. So what then happens after we born? Then we meet why I do that, and I reasoning myself why I do that, what has happened, and where it's going to lead me to. So there were Vedas and scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, everything it talks about how you have the expansion in the mind, because the mind is always limitless, as Buddhism says, yeah. And as Brianna says, very good one, as Naveen said, is we all walk from something called a different, but I don't think any difference here. For me, church and the temple and the mosque and everything is my own home, because I come from different religions as well. So earth is the only place. It's beyond time and space. It just stays there, permanent. Okay. Now then the second thing is we carry the bondages along with the birth. That was blown out of my own experience. So what are the bondages? The bondages, the attachments, the desires. And that my very attachment and my desire is the keynote for all my happenings. So if I found out that and I eliminate whether I need that on that moment or just leave it off or give it a go. So there I come to the beautiful energy level called the balance. That which talks about on Hinduism, how you can balance yourself. If you are very in sad and misery, we are flowing into the lower part of the energy. And if I'm going very towards the higher end of a spirituality, then I go beyond the mind, body, and the limitlessness. So, to the soul. So, when I go that, I forget the body. So how I can become grounded with the energy levels and make myself balanced? I have to play a role of a mother and I play a role of a yogi in a spiritual aspect. And as well as to the lovely community who comes into the, grab the teaching from me. So every role I take, the moment I keep the mind and the body to be in balance. So that very balance is very important in life, that we are not shattered on to the top or down, but then we stay calm and we do all the human roles. So the desire, attachments leads to the misery and sadness. There is nothing called good and bad. It is all an experience. So Hinduism talks about complete experience of your life and experience on the earth. As Naveen said, we are just a traveler. So this is a beautiful teaching in the religion.
Thanks for that. It strikes me listening to each of you that there is distinct moments of connection and crossover. So there's parts of each of what you've said which you can find a connection to your own faith or your belief system. So that there seems to be commonality. And so part of our hope is obviously that we can find areas of commonality as starting points as opposed to difference, because it at least draws us together as opposed to apart. One of the questions that was suggested, I'm going to try to paraphrase it because it's a longer kind of statement with a question at the end, so just forgive me if I don't do a good job of it. But just around the question that's written is, how can claims of exclusivity and finality be set aside by the different religions and beliefs, thereby to allow a unification of belief and allegiance? So I'm just going to try to take that question and maybe just put a different slant on it, and it may be a failure. We've got places of commonality. We have shared humanity, and we can see that, and we can respectfully engage. How does the place of difference in belief, so not to actually try to put a wedge in, but say Buddhism, there is not a God, a deity that we follow. Jeremy and Naveed would say we're from monotheistic religion. So we do hold to that. That is vital and true to that kind of space. How do we navigate the place of difference in these conversations? Because it just strikes me that if we try to unify to become all one in what we believe and follow, we become very beige. We become very bland. And I wonder if that's the outcome. This is a genuine question. So I don't know who wants to go there with me on that, but how do we engage with the spots of difference while actually continuing to affirm common humanity, the places where we connect and all the rest of it? How about, that was maybe your question that I'm going off? Yeah, which is around gender, race, class.
Mathematicians and use them in my research, and you can just imagine Einstein, for example, a physicist, rejecting Riemann's mathematics because he was a physicist. He unconditionally accepted the truths of mathematics, as we all do as scientists, realising that the different paths to the question of reality come from each one of those. We unconditionally accept, even though we have lots of discussions and debates, the truths within those and accept them unconditionally. So I can't see why each of these religions cannot, in the same way as that, reject their exclusivity and their concepts of finality and accept that each one of these revelators are the same and are worthy of the same allegiance, thereby allowing a unity of religion. And it doesn't mean that you become beige. The physicists and the chemists, and they're still working and integrating and developing and continuing. That's why the scientific revolution has been so successful.
Thank you. Appreciate you confirming.
Okay, so I can give you a bit of a Buddhist perspective on that. So Buddhist faith, like faith is, we can have aspirational faith, like I want to become like so-and-so. I think it's Ash Barty at the moment, isn't it? Didn't she just win something? And then we have aspirational faith, what I want to become, admiring faith, admiring the one who does. The faith of conviction, and this is, I think, the one that links into your question, which is a process of reasoning. So in Buddhism we have, and particularly Tibetan Buddhism, we have a very active style of debate. When I mean active, there's physicality involved, no contact with the opposite side, but it can get energetic, and it's a system of logic. You have to follow the logic to prove or disprove. And you're not trying to, with someone else who has a different perspective, you're not trying to prove them wrong. You actually, and maybe you do this in mathematics, just trying to find where the faults in their arguments might be by continually debating. It's not the sort of parliamentarian Western style of debate where you're trying to knock each other down. It's actually trying to help each other learn more. So if it can't be proven, and this is what the Buddha said, if it can't be proven, so that's why sometimes I think that Buddhism is said to be a science or a philosophy or so forth. And I think all faiths have an element of being philosophies for sure, because they're about how we conduct our lives. So there's certainly the use of logic, but the Buddha would also say, the Buddha said actually, there's 84,000 paths to enlightenment, which is what we would call the point where you've fully perfected all your positive qualities and there's no negativity anywhere in your being, no capacity to have negativity at all arise. So that's the state of being a Buddha, which the Buddha said, I'm awake. So this is like the ultimate reality. The Buddha said there's 84,000 paths. Now, how many religions did we say? 45 that are identified in Sunshine Coast. I don't know how many there are in the world, but it's not 84,000. So why the Buddha said that is, he said that we're all different in the way that we all have different predispositions, different things that are going to help us on our spiritual journey. So no matter if Islam works for you, go for it. If Christianity works for you, be a good Christian. If you're born into Aboriginal culture, you're going to follow Aboriginal spirituality, although you could probably find within Aboriginal people, like you said, your grandmother Anglican and so forth. So there is a need to find meaning, definitely, and it's what propels all of us. We're genuinely all looking for some lasting, enduring happiness. And I think, if we allow that all different faiths can lead to the same end, whatever label we want to put on that, then it's a more open and unifying place of engagement. And I think that's what we're engaging in here, is a place of where do we come together in unity.
For myself, the dreaming talks a lot about creation stories. And, like I said at the start, for me, Coolam was once a man, a strong man, a warrior. But according to science and history, it's just a rock. It's a monolithic rock that came from a volcano. And I don't deny that. Like Turkey said, we've got to have a little bit of logic in ourselves. I think you don't have to lose your spirituality to know, inverted commas, the truth. The Big Bang Theory, God, whichever way you want to think about your different creation stories, you don't have to lose your faith and your spirituality in learning or finding the scientific truth, because that's what's beautiful about Australia, is it's always been a multicultural continent, even prior to colonisation. Different faiths, different religions, different languages. We don't have to lose that in finding the truth. Does that make sense?
Anyone else want to comment? For the record, there's no compulsion to comment.
Well, before I start with, the question is bit in depth. Actually, you are talking about the science. First, let me go on to that part. You touch, you feel, you experiment, and you bring the result, and that's science. That's a knowledge. But religion is concerned with something to expand your own self. all religions nowadays, it's been open to anyone, and anyone can follow any path. It does not necessarily be to be in one umbrella and you have to have all the religions inside. But in Hinduism, we have that greater proof from the ancient. Hinduism born in India, and yoga also born in India. Yoga is a scientific approach of method where you get into the mind and expand yourself with so many practices, and then you become one with the self and union with the nature. There, the birth cycle gets cut off if the practices are genuine and if I am true in the path. So then I determine my death. This day, I want to leave the body and I just want to travel out of the body. So I determine myself, my practices would make my body split and the soul gets out of the body. That's we call as a samadhi, or the balance. That's a very big experiment on my own self with the practices. When Hinduism concerned, when Hinduism born, the whole country of India had 6 religion inside Hinduism from the past. It's several thousand years ago, Hinduism born. So we have 6 days in a row, and each day is being given to one. That's how we name the days. So each day has been allocated to one sector of the religion. So Shaktam, Shaivam, Vaishnavam, and then now they say Buddhism, but we say Buddham, okay? And then Ganpati Patyayam. So everything was taken by one person called Adi Shankaracharya and put into one umbrella, and all became as a Hinduism. So he became the father of Hinduism, okay? So in a temple, you can see all this 7 energies in one dome called the temple. And what we do there? Each sculpture, each thing, everything is being scientifically proven with the architecture, building, and the energy center. It's a complete dome of energy. So when you talk about physics and chemistry and science and mathematics, why do we have so many subjects? It can be all the subjects in one thing. We need mathematics for the calculation for our life. We need science. And the science has so many divisions, like physics talks about the space and time. And same as so each and every area, it helps our own life to increase our, everyday living in a better way. Same with the religion. The expansion of the energy can be reached in so many dimensions. A human birth has so many dimensions it talks about. That's where I come from, the tradition, where the scientific approach of the Sri Vidya Tantra, where you can see all this 3D dimension of Mahameru, where it has all this, I think I have a ring here. So this one talks about all the dimensions of the energies. So that's been in our top of our head. We say you go unlimited when you reach the upper level of the practices. So the religion comes up to the wisdom path where the gland of the third eye. So that's where the religion stops. So when we get into the expand level, we see all the religion. There is a commonalities in all the religion, but we go through beautiful different ways to approach one thing, the union within the self. That's all it is. I think I humbly answered your question here.
In parts of the Christian tradition, in the last month or so, we've had a week of prayer for Christian unity, which happens each year. And it's a tremendous aspiration. But even within the Christian religion, and even within denominations within Christianity, we're divided because actually all of us are different and we come to different understandings and we have different readings of the scriptures. And so while unity is a great aspiration, I think a far better question is how we live with difference. Because when we look at our world, that's the reality of the world we live in, that we're not all the same. And while we have all sorts of things in common and we live out of a common experience of being human, in the end we're different. And, we need to learn how we live with the other. And that, for me, is a far more important question than how we might all be the same.
If I could just address the other part, which was about finality. From a Buddhist perspective, there's no finality. So there's no beginning, no end. There's beginningless time, there's, beginningless lives and so forth. Actually, when you become a Buddha, it's sort of like your job begins. I think it's a bit like God. God seems to be very busy around the world, probably in many other world systems as well. But that you're there to help every other being to reach that same thing. So we sort of talk in countless great eons. And even like the Big Bang, we say everything started with, we say no. What happened before the Big Bang? There has to have been other Big Bangs or smaller bangs, or something had to precede the Big Bang. So you go back, and you analyse back, and you keep going.
We might just, if it's okay, we might just take a pause on that one for now, and then maybe afterwards, if you want to kind of continue having that conversation individually, we'll go there, if that's fine. So everyone can just do a little bit of a whew. So I don't know about me. I got a little brain, and that's full. So, Michaela, you have a large brain. Take us somewhere else.
Okay, let's. I don't know if this is going to help your brain, Tim, but I was interested to explore a bit more what Jeremy was just saying about getting comfortable with difference, because we do have quite a few questions from the audience that are skirting around that kind of conversation, and they're asking about how we can encourage others to have an open mind and embrace diversity and acknowledge that there's difference but still work together. And then the other question about how can we share our learnings and our faith with other people who are willing to listen and willing to learn, and how, as interested people, can we learn about your faith? Do we just rock up at the mosque and say, hey, Naveed, can you tell me about Islam? Or, rock up at Chen Rezig and say, can I have some vegetarian grub and a chat about Buddhism? Is that the way we can learn about each other and have a better understanding of the difference so we can get on? Or do you have some other practical tips for people about how we navigate this space of being comfortable with difference, and do we even need to know about what the difference is to go there? Taxi? No. That's your husband, Yogi.
The camera's okay. I don't know about the husband. I hope you're okay. So yes, you can just rock up at Chen Rezi. Absolutely, they've got a big love cafe. You can come and have a nice bit of veggie grub and take a wander around. People do it often, every day of the week. It seems that people do that, and if they want to chat to I say a nun more than a monk, because there's a lot more nuns than there are monks, but a monk as well if you can find one. That's a totally open thing. I think also we were discussing last time beforehand about, sort of having multi-faith or multicultural events where you're sharing food, you're coming together, sharing food, music, and so forth, different ways of doing that. In Sydney, for the past 12 years or so, I've been part of the Women's Interfaith Network. And one of the things that we do, apart from dialogue together and take the same topic and everyone their different perspective over a year, or their faith perspective, is to visit each other's place of worship and participate in that. And that's really good too, to understand on that level. And then I loved going to the mosque, and it was all the young men who were feeding us and showing us around and doing everything. It was really inspiring to me, because if you come to my place, it's going to be all the women, older women. So.
Now, if it happened in the mosque that older women were serving younger men, those men are in deep trouble. Yeah. So the mums of those men would not be proud of them, and they're going to get in deep trouble. So that's probably why they were serving you. Once the mosque opens up, we had a little bit of trouble getting there here on the coast. But it's nearly there now. So the first thing we intend to do is to have an open community day in the mosque and invite you to a barbecue, which is going to have halal steaks and halal sausages and vegetarian. And somebody would have to tell me how the halal sausages differ from the pork sausages, because I haven't had one. And I've been encouraged by my Aussie friends that if you don't do it before you die, you have not lived enough. Now, that's probably not going to happen with me. So you guys got to tell me what's the big difference between the two. The other thing which sort of like connects to the past question and this question is that what I believe or try to say to other people is that it's absolutely okay to believe in a God, but don't try to be the God. Things go wrong when we believe in a God and then we try to take the position of the God and become the judge and then pass rulings that this one is going to hell, whereas this one goes to heaven. And I am definitely going to heaven. Think about yourself, mate. You got to go to heaven. Don't worry about the other people. It's up to the God to forgive them or not forgive them. If you are entirely comfortable with where you are, then you might go on and try and help other people. But look at it as helping other people. Don't try to be the God who is serving judgments. And I think that's one key message which we all have to understand in order to be people who survive with each other without waging wars against each other.
I can't remember who it was who said that when God hates all the same people that I hate, I've created God in my image rather than the other way around. And I think, part of that key to understanding difference is to step outside of that way of understanding things, but also to get to know people and to have conversations, this sort of conversation. When I was in Darwin, one of the great gifts for the church community there was that each Sunday morning, busloads of asylum seekers would come from one of the detention centres and join us for church. And it was a fantastic collection of Muslim people and Christian people and people who didn't identify as anything in particular, but as they came each Sunday, and they were mainly Iranian asylum seekers, people in the church community heard their stories and they got to know them as individuals. And so people knew Ehsan or they knew Puya. And all of a sudden, it wasn't a conversation about those people. It was a conversation about human beings. And it's not until you sit down and you look someone in the eye and you have a conversation that you can begin to break down some of those things. So in terms of breaking down those challenges about dealing with the other, this is how you do it. And you need to make opportunities for that to happen. We've all walked past someone in the street probably every day who looks a bit different, and we've never even said hello. It's very easy to start a conversation, and it begins with each one of us, I think.
Oh, what was the question? No, joking. Celebrating differences. I think that's what it's all about. I go to different schools, organisations, talking about cultural diversity, not just Aboriginality, but cultural diversity on the whole spectrum. And it's about highlighting the commonalities and celebrating the differences, because that's what makes us unique and that's what makes it worth celebrating. And I did one class in this lecture theatre, Sci 101, and it's part of the human condition that you always, when you have a conversation with someone, it's about who's right. I think we need to lose that, and it's about, you have to retrain. You have to retrain yourself. You have to reprogram your brain. It's not about finding out who's right. It's about finding out what's right, or what's the best outcome, or what am I comfortable with, and taking that responsibility with in yourself to go out and continue this conversation that you've had the privilege of being a part of tonight, and continue to have it out there and go, well, I don't know, I was talking to Naveed and, you know, I don't think that what you just said about Islam is right. Challenge, when you hear something that is incorrect, I hope that you would take that responsibility on yourself to challenge those misconceptions. And like I said on the first forum, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. That's why you guys are already here. So take it with you when you go out there. That'd be really awesome.
To this part of question, actually, from my own experience, if I have identified myself, then whichever the world I live in, and whichever the land I go, and whatever the people I see, everything is colorful and nice to my eyes. So the source is identifying my own self. That is the key point there. So if I, like in Hinduism it says, if there is no temple in that particular village, or don't live there, what it really means, you have to build a temple? No, it is not that. Your temple is your heart. And if you could love yourself, you can be anywhere in any part of the world. I nurtured that love and that beautiful practices from the young. And when I stepped into Australia, actually, I shouldn't say here the word called migrated. I would say Australia, the land, the nature called me here in the form of a wedding and in the form of a husband. So to join my husband, I came with a very happy smile to Australia when I stepped in. That time my age was about 22 years. It's a beautiful experience. And the flight was from United Kingdom, from England, and I was a tiny build. And everyone was huge and tall, but I was seeing with a very great smile on everyone. And with my little luggages on inside. I didn't see any difference there. And I felt something, I'm going to have a very new home, and that's going to be my home. Until now, I'm seeing this is my home. I have the practices on me. I have identified myself maybe a Hindu or anything. That's the practices and that's a birth which nature has placed me there. So I greet and salute the nature for that. If I know my own home in depth, then I will definitely know the others, right? So walked into this beautiful land, and until this moment, I've been nurtured, grown beautifully with the spirituality. And even when there was a very big heat storm in my life with my husband's sickness, and nearby to the hospital in Melbourne, I saw just a church, a beautiful church. And I felt that church is my temple. So I need some hold there. So I walked into the church. I see the complete cross in there, and I had the candlelight on, and I felt my energy is, getting up. And since I was born in Hinduism, but my education is completely with a Catholic Christian school. So I go to choir and I mix up with the Sunday prayers. My mother is a woman, not just a Hindu tradition, but she takes us, because India is a land where you see one race, but with the multi-religion. Okay, all the religions are there. So when Christmas happens, she pulls and takes the 3 kids down to the church to celebrate the Christmas, and she says, my 3 kids are in the hands of you, Jesus. And then we walk away. Then in Islam, when the Ramadan is going on, she used to go and to a Muslim house nearby, in the mosque, we get the porridge and we drink it, and then she takes back to the home. So the expandedness is in her mind to bring all the religion inside the home. My brother used to say, hey, look, you belong to Hindu. Just leave that. You are taking all the festival on board, too much on me. But that beautiful openness of learning and that education which has been carried out on me by the practice from the young, which made me not to wonder as I have come to a different country or seeing a different people. I am seeing a lovely humans on the earth, and the whole planet Earth is my home. That's it.
Thank you for that. What we're going to do, we're going to launch into getting some questions from the floor. And Michaela's going to run around, but I'm going to go the first question just here. And you're going to ask a really short question. So the way our questions from the floor works is just keep it in line with how we've actually done the whole night so far. But if you can just make a short question rather than a long statement. And panellists, what we might do just to see if we can get to a lot of questions, we may just get a few to answer each one, if that's okay, as opposed to all of you. That's just fair warning. But maybe just tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Nina. So I'm part of a group who we're working towards the Sunshine Coast becoming a refugee welcome zone. So I wanted to know what would it mean to you and your faith for our community to be a refugee welcome zone? It's basically a statement that says that our community celebrates diversity and multiculturalism.
What I'll do, I'm going to hand it, first hand down the bottom. Whoever gets to the top wins.
Just very briefly, fabulous, go for it. I was just thinking when we were talking about that Yogi was talking about being taken to all the different places, which is also my experience as a child. Whatever church or temple or whatever was open in those days, they were open. Anyway, so it reminded me. I reflected the fact that I was hooked up with this guy, a Muslim guy in a refugee camp. What do they call them? Detention centre. Yeah, that's what they call them. A detention centre in Melbourne, and he wanted to learn to meditate. He was not at all interested in Buddhism, but then the conditions in that refugee situation were quite difficult, very difficult for him in particular. He kept going into isolation out of the population. But I also work with prisoners, so in prison systems, and they're actually, people aren't allowed to, they change their faith according to who's putting on the best barbecue, so they're not allowed to do that. So I try and say it's open to everyone. They say, no, you can only have the people born Buddhist, so whatever. But I think any way that maybe we could be of service to help in that endeavour.
Maybe just a couple more.
So as a part of what I do otherwise is being on, what's that called? The MAG group for the Sunshine Coast, which is Multicultural Action Group on the Sunshine Coast. So in brief, the answer is absolutely. I think these people, irrespective of how they've come here and what had led to come here, now these are people who are in extreme strife. And I think that's a shared message from whatever religion you're coming from, that when it's a human being in distress, you have to assist them. I think one of the things that all of you must have heard, and as I've heard in between the discussion that we have had today, is that the common message from all religions is humanity. So humanity trumps religion at this point of time. And I think the message of humanity is that these people are at the verge of death pretty much, and we got to save them. So if Sunshine Coast became one of these places, I, with most of the Muslims on the Sunshine Coast, and I can speak for everyone here now, pretty much because I've spent some time with them, would be on the forefront to come and assist you guys in whatever way we can.
And that's why I'm going to vote for Naveed for Prime Minister. That's it.
Yeah, other questions? Hands. Don't make me run too far, too fast. I'm getting old.
Hey guys, my name is Bilal and I'm living on a coast for over 2 years now. And I actually born in Pakistan and then moved to Dubai and lived my teenage there. And Dubai is a really multicultural society with like only 10% original Arabs living there, and the 90% of people came from different backgrounds. And it was really difficult from coming out from a really religious family and try to adjust in a society where, because my parents didn't send me to a Muslim school, they sent me to a school that was British school. So I studied in a British school, and there was more British values or Christian values, I would say, in the school rather than being as a Muslim. So it was really difficult for me because I was growing up, I was 10 years old when I moved there, and when I moved there, it was all, how do I adjust? And all I was doing, it's not a question, it's my statement. It's more of like I'm telling you that how I grew up in a multicultural society and how I deal with the people every day. So what I was used to do is what my parents used to tell me that, this is your religion, and when you step out of the door, you leave your religion at home. You go outside, you meet with people and just treat them as a human. You treat them the same way you would treat your brother. Just treat them the same way and you'll be all right. And I think I did that and I survived. So I think that's the key for the community, for us to just leave your religion at your door, and then when you go out, just be a human and think about that a person who's sitting alone on the beach. Don't let him just sit there, Go maybe start a conversation with him. Maybe he's on the verge of suicide or something. I lost a friend for a suicide, so just go out, have a conversation and talk to them.
Cool.
Thank
you
very much, everyone.
Michaela?
Yes.
Just here.
That was a statement. So that was the difference. It was a question and a statement. We're going for questions. That was the first one, the question.
Cool, thank you. It's been a fabulous experience with the humanitarian commonality between the religions, and I think that's absolutely fabulous. I'm hesitant to ask hard questions because that's not the aim, but I have to ask this. For those of us whose hourglass is running out, and we're all getting older, aren't we? I'm just wondering, what is your opinion of the afterlife for each individual person according to the faith they believe in? Will we all go to our individual afterlives according to our religions, or is that not conceivable, or is that a question that we should pass on just at this present time?
I think
it's a great question, and it keeps coming up at these, so you're not alone in wondering.
I think I touched on it briefly earlier. I believe that the physical body stays and returns to the earth, but my consciousness and my spirit returns to the dreaming. For us, the dreaming is almost like a parallel universe. It's constant. The dreaming is constant. So that's why I say my spirits, my ancestors, they're always around me. And so when I die, my body returns to the earth, to the Mother Earth, and then my spirit returns to my ancestors.
Okay, so from a Buddhist perspective, we have multiple lives. So dependent on how you've lived this life or past lives, you reap the results of that. Some we call karma, ripens some at the time of death and some in the future life, and depending on it. So we wouldn't say you go to heaven or hell, although we do have quite a few heavens and quite a few hells. It was easier when I was sort of Catholic. There was only one, Now we've got 16 cold hells, 16 hot hells, and 4 other ones, and they're pretty graphic and there's torture. So anyway, it's all dependent on really on how you live this life, and I think that's a shared thing, and it's not like there's a God sitting in judgment. It's said to be the law of cause and effect, that a positive will bring a positive result and a negative will bring a negative result, and that we're engaging in both all the time, but we can always transform the mind. In other words, we can always use practices, good deeds and so forth, save lives if we've gone around killing and doing the opposite to be able to be rid of the results of anything negative that we've done. So it's all dependent on what we do right now, up until and including the death process.
Okay, according to the perspective of Hinduism, I'll distinct in the two stages. With the normal Hindus having the practices like just a normal life, it actually talks about having the intentions called actions that's been performed in, let's put goodie bag and the bad bag, okay? Hinduism talks about never hurt by word, deed, and action. So that's been practiced by a normal human, and we have lived the life, okay? The death happens normally. According to our actions, the intellectuality or the wisdom gets darkened or lightened. The intellectuality, we term one intellectual as the trees, because we water and they just blossom the flowers. And then the second two intellectuality is the animals, reproduce, and then they eat the hunger. So it goes on 3 and 4 and the bees, and then the human comes into the very beautiful called the 6 senses with the 6 intellectual power. So according to the karmic intentions of the actions that I performed on this birth, then I determine my birth. It may be a very strong word. I determine my birth, and I take into a form of creation again, and the birth cycle continues until I reach the human board. Once I get into the flight called a human flight, and there I can expand myself like a jet, fly high and open my wisdom, and I have a chances to have these practices on me, no matter what the age is, no matter what the caste is, no matter what the religion is. The minimum capacity is, the minimum qualification is becoming a human, okay? So when I perform those actions and the practices, and now I want to have this death in my hand, okay? So first I hold the religion, I see God outside, then going into depth, expand myself, then that's a stage where the religion flows like a river, but then the expansion happens spontaneously on me, opening up my wisdom, my intellect, my actions, and then, this is it. So there I realize my own self. Once the realization happens, the bondage goes off. No matter what happens outside, I am just there like that, as a witness for every actions, and I'm not into it inside, whether it's a sad or a misery or the suffering or the pain or the good or bad. It's all my experiences that carried on my bag. Okay, that if I have the determination and I am traveling with that, and if I have expanded there, then I have my own intellectuality of having the 6 senses, whether to take the birth again or just eliminate it. So that's the great expansion of the yoga, union with the self. That's it.
You guys want to do anything?
Do you want another one?
Quickly? Yeah. 60 seconds each.
60 seconds. Despite all that fantastic art of angels on clouds or the devil with a pitchfork in the fires of hell, Jesus didn't actually talk a lot about an afterlife. He was concerned about life. And for me, that sense that we actually believe in life before death is something more important to think about. One of the poets said, we've all had enough practice at being dead. Let's try living for a change. And that's the invitation, I think, of Christianity. So I don't give it much thought, I'm afraid.
Disclaimer, I'm not a religious scholar. So on the day of judgment, you can't use Dr. Naveed told me that. But I'll tell you a quick anecdote or a story from the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He told his companions once that a certain woman has passed away in this particular village, which had actually happened. And he told the companions, look, I have got confirmation from God that this woman has been forgiven. And the companions went, well, this woman was your bitter enemy and she cursed you and it has been so bad with yourself and so on and so forth. And he said, it doesn't matter. What happened was before her death, she saw a sickly dog by the side of water well. So she took the time to get water out for this dog and give water to the dog first before she drank herself. That's what got her across the line. So it's a university examination. You pass at 33%.
That never happened for me, Naveed.
Other questions? Any burning? Oh, I knew it'd be right over the other side. I can do it. I'm sprint champion from 1985.
Good, isn't it? There you go.
Where do you go?
G'day, my name's Chris, and I'm going to be fairly targeted with this one because it's a bit selfish of what can I be doing. So I come from a Christian tradition, and for the people in my tradition, we would like to think that there are some good things in our history, but there's also some really awful, horrible things that we've done in our history. And even today, we have many people who claim to represent our tradition, like a wonderful orange-haired man who's building a wall in America at the moment. And my question is, for me and for the people in my community, our Christian tradition that we represent, how can we be better? If there's one thing that for myself as a Christian and my community, we walk out of here, what is one thing that we can do? And perhaps particularly for those who we have hurt, what can we be doing better? What can you observe for the Christians to be doing better?
Might start with Jeremy. Good facilitation, Tim.
What can we do better? I think one of the things we can do is look at the past, look at where we've gone wrong. One of the things for the churches at the moment, we've just come through 5 years of a Royal Commission, which has painted in large letters our failings to the world. And so for us, one of the things we need to do is make sure none of that stuff happens again. And so whether it's the Royal Commission or whether it's, we think back to the Crusades or we think back to some of those early missionaries who did things that we look at and say, actually, that's not okay. I think we need to go out from here with a renewed determination to live a life that's grounded in love. For me, that's what's at the heart of the faith. And Michael Curry, the presiding bishop in the United States, just this week, talking about some of the refugee stuff in the United States, said, if it doesn't look like love and it doesn't look like Jesus, then it's not Christian. And that's not a bad place to start.
Just would one, maybe two at the most, panellists, would any of you like to add anything just in relation to Chris's question regarding what can we do better? That was targeted around a Christian's faith. Anything you'd like to share into that?
Yeah, whatever the religion you're born with, whatever the faith you're walking with, to add a very great future, I would say take those beautiful practices on you. Whatever the religion might be, if it's a Christianity or Hinduism or Islam or, indigenous culture or Buddhism. So first we have to know our own home, I would say humbly. We have to know our own home. Why the nature has placed in that particular spot of religion. So we have to rely on that lovely path. Whether you walk into any mass prayers or any churches and any temples or anything, and you see some practices that shouldn't be done, and to your knowledge and to your wisdom, just calmly walk off. But we don't want to shut the complete religion on us, the relaying path on us. So I would say humbly, we have to see, look, everywhere in the life, every moment is a risk, okay? There are always a risk factors. As long as I am doing my own actions in a righteous way, then I deserve the best in my life. So please place yourself in a very goodie bag, Like, you place yourself in the higher esteemed level of towards the enlightenment. Why religion? Okay, let me answer that one. That's a very quick, short answer I'm going to give you. We are with the hunger, with the body limits. We eat food. And then we do nurturing for playing. It's all body level. Okay, we can achieve the beautiful body level. But once we get aged, then we turn something. Some search is happening in us, and some self-inquiry happens inside us after a long time of life. But I would say when we start with the religion, the prayers are the soul food. So if we have the inner self of satisfaction on doing those, and we carry from the inner self, and we transform a beautiful life. So please walk into the religion, walk into the holy spot, because those all energy dooms. We are not just, we walked in as a human and sat here, we carried our traditions. The whole church is sitting here, I would say. The whole mosque is sitting here. The whole temple is sitting here. And the complete nature is present here. And lovely monastic center is here in the form of a human. So this is a great spot where you have opened yourself for learning, and please continue this journey.
Brianna, and then Michaela.
We've got probably time for one last question down the front. I don't want you to hold your hand up too long, so we've got you.
Awesome. So just really, Australia has a big history of the mistreatment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. As Jeremy touched on, in the missionaries in the early Australian days, we were stripped of our culture and religion was forced upon us. But moving forward, I'm going to quote Mahatma Gandhi, and I'm going to say, be the change you wish to see in the world. Because if you walk in your truth and you walk in love, everybody else around you will see that. As a traditional owner, I'll say, come and meaningfully engage with us. NAIDOC's coming up very shortly, I believe the 14th of July at Cotton Tree. Come and join us, 14th of July at Cotton Tree. It's going to be a day full of culture, and that will be your chance to meet some local Indigenous people and engage in a conversation.
Beautiful.
Thanks for the welcome, sis. Hi, my name is Vinny. Before 2019 hits, is there one thing from each of you, one simple thing that everyone in this room, because we're all going to walk out that door, and, before life gets too busy, we might forget some of the stuff that we hear here. Is there one thing from each of you, that 5 challenges probably, that we could do by the time 2019 hits? Yeah.
One thing or 5 challenges? Or 5 challenges is your one thing?
One each.
Oh,
so 5 challenges in total.
So Vinny's one of my brothers. That's not really my brother that I was talking about before. And so that's awesome. I'm going to steal this one because I reckon somebody else is going to think of this one. That's why I wanted to go first. Have a conversation. I've already said it. Just have a conversation with somebody from a different religion or a different race. Have a conversation.
Accept within yourself. Complete acceptance. So far, we have lived these many years, and we have gone from the past with a beautiful journey in this life. First, try to accept your own self, how much you have achieved in life, and what all you have done before you walk out of the doorstep. And you will go expanded from the human level.
That's 2.
Try and shift some of your preconceived lenses. And the other thing that I really want every one of us to do is challenge anyone who is divisive. And maybe then we can get rid of the 0.5% of the population who have got purple or orange hair and get to the top. We are talking about the esteemed President of the United States. So if we can challenge them at the right spot, they wouldn't ascend to where they are, and then you're thinking it's a wonder how they got there, but the bigger question is how to get them out of there. So.
3.
I think one thing we can all do is work out how we can translate, what goes on in our head or our hearts into action. And that's more than just about clicking like on Facebook. It's about actually doing something. It's even more than just signing a petition. Signing a petition about refugees is a great start, but do something. And, we can all do something. And decide what that one thing is and do it. And when you've done it, then do something else.
One's enough. Okay, so when I was in primary school, somebody was doing a survey on redheads. Redheads.
Are you talking to matches?
No, people. Right. So we all had to stand up, those of us with red hair. You can see I don't need to worry about that anymore, but you felt so picked out and you were the minority, and it was so I think a lot of that, just focusing on the difference that does the, brown eye, blue eye thing. I was on a retreat where it was when they had one of the flus, and they thought people on this retreat might have a flu, so they had to be separated out from everyone else. But the trouble is, we all went and said hello to them because we felt they felt isolated. Anyway, they didn't have the whatever it was, virus. Swine flu, that's what it was. Yeah. Anyway, they didn't have it. So I think the most profound thing is practicing kindness. Kindness to ourselves, to yourself, and kindness to others, and not just the human beings. Kindness to the environment or the beings that inhabit this earth. And to know that, for example, we know if somebody was angry without even opening their mouth, walked into this room, you feel the vibes and you don't want to have a conversation. The same with a positive energy, that it generates as powerful an energy that maybe we don't realize so much, but it is very powerful in the environment around us, so that we already are, by that, practice of kindness, creating change.
Terrific. It's 5, Tim. 5.
I was going to say...
Who can recite them back? We've got 1 minute. No. So you thought you were coming here just to listen, but now you have things to do or requiring action from you. Good work down the front there. What a note to end on. So keep the applause coming. If you wouldn't mind thanking our wonderful panel for sharing their thoughts with us tonight. And if I can also acknowledge the team behind putting this event together. Obviously, we couldn't include 45 different faith groups on this panel, so we had to rock, scissors, paper to get these 5 here. But can we acknowledge the other faith leaders and our working group who put this event together, in particular John from the Jewish community, who's been a great part of that team and continues to turn up and support these events. Thank you. And like we've said, this is just the start of the conversation. You all have a to-do list now.